Hello, everyone. On today's IRS tax refund update, we'll recap the latest developments as millions continue to wait for the processing of their tax returns and issuing of tax refunds. We'll also identify the 5 top reasons on what is delaying those tax refunds from being sent out, and some issues encountered by taxpayers, including the 570 and 971 tax transcript codes, and options available for assistance, especially for those who have been experiencing longer delays. Recapping where things currently stand, as the IRS has processed 98% of tax returns filed this year. However, if you're still waiting on your refund, you're among the over 2.4 million still waiting on that tax return to be processed filed this year. And if you're still waiting on last year's tax refund, you're among the estimated 1.4 million that has not had their tax return processed. For those waiting on amended returns, the total is nearly 1 million unprocessed returns, and that is a combination of both this year's and last year's. Unprocessed employer returns is at 347,000. However, unprocessed amended employer returns is at 1 million. And why this number is important for many of you is that the IRS needs to process your employer's tax returns so they can match the total wages you reported on your tax return versus what the employer reported to identify any discrepancies. If you've received a 60-day notice from the IRS, you're among the likely impacted group. Now, moving on to the top 5 reasons on what is causing those refund delays for many of you. Starting off with your tax return is under audit. This particularly applies to those claiming the earned income tax credit as well as child tax credit, and it is impacting those of you who filed for the first time for that credit, but also those of you who have been claiming these credits for many years, and even some of you who've had to provide documentation in regards to your dependents in the past under a previous audit. As for the fuel tax credit, we've been seeing a surge of reports of those fraudulently filing for this credit. So as a result, the IRS has increased its enforcement of this, and unfortunately, it's taking time and resources away from those of you who have legitimate tax returns that need reviewing. The second reason is your employer's tax return has not been processed, and as we stated, absolutely necessary because the IRS must match the wages you entered on your tax return versus what your employer submitted. Now, it's not listed here, but worth mentioning, and it has to do with employers' tax returns. There are those employers out there who have entered the wrong Social Security number for their employees in their database, and that will cause significant issues in some waiting on their tax refunds because of the mismatched Social Security numbers. If you had a new job in the last year and the IRS say they cannot locate your employer wages, do confirm your employer entered the right Social Security number into their payroll system, because unfortunately, this is a very common problem as we've seen in the last several years. Another reason for refund delays is ID verification is needed. This was a huge problem last year and one of the top reasons that caused refund delays, and is happening again this year. The IRS is supposed to send out a notice informing the taxpayer to complete this process, but on many occasions the notice was never received. This will freeze the processing of your tax return and issuing a refund, so checking your tax transcripts by accessing it through your IRS account or reaching out to the IRS if you're part of this impact group is advisable. For those of you who filed paper tax returns, you're likely to experience some of the longest waits. That is because an IRS employee must manually enter every single entry on your tax return into their system, as the IRS does not use scanning technology. We also saw last year that not all tax returns are processed in the order in which they are received. At this point, there's still over 1 million unprocessed paper tax returns, and we expect the backlog of those not to be finished until fall as of this point. And finally, those e-file returns that are just part of the backlog sitting in the queue. Now, there would be most likely those who filed later in the tax season. And also keep in mind, several states, mainly California, have actually until October to file their federal tax returns. However, for those of you early filers, there's a probability at this point you're still waiting on your tax return due to the IRS identifying a potential issue with your tax return. Now, one likely result of several of these problems is encountering the 570 and 971 codes on your tax transcripts. The 57 code represents your return is under review, while the 971 code represents a notice is being sent out by the IRS or has in regards to the problem. Now, if you see a 971 code with a recent date and have not received a notice within 2 weeks of that date in the mail, do reach out to the IRS to obtain a duplicate notice or find out what the notice detailed. For those of you who still need assistance, here are 3 contact options. As reported by our viewers, the IRS customer service line does have a higher answer rate than the previous last 2 years, with their main number being 1-800-829-1040. The second option is contacting the Taxpayer Advocate Service either by calling 1-877-777-4778 or submitting IRS Form 911. And the third is getting in contact and scheduling an appointment at your local IRS office. Let us know in the comments section below about your ongoing tax refund issue. In the meantime, we'll keep monitoring the situation for further developments, so make sure to click on the thumbs up and subscribe button below for future updates on this channel, and thanks for watching.